What if your mind did not need permission to begin? Not from your mood, not from the weather inside your chest, not from the shifting tides of motivation, but from a quieter and more reliable signal, the one that says now, even when you do not feel ready. You know that pause before a task, that breath held just a little too long, the cursor blinking like a heartbeat on an empty page. You can almost hear the friction, the brain's subtle resistance, the body leaning back when your life is asking you to lean in. There is nothing wrong with you for feeling this hesitation. In fact, your nervous system is doing exactly what it was designed to do: conserve energy, avoid risk, keep you near the familiar. Yet you are more than a set of alarms and reflexes, and the deeper part of you knows it. I see the cycle that wears you down. The promise made in the evening that dissolves in the morning. The plan that looks clean on paper but frays when the first notification pulls at your attention. The good intention that collapses the moment your mood does not cooperate. It is painful to watch your own capacity idling in neutral while days tick by, and it is easy to name this pause as laziness, but that word bruises without healing. The truth is gentler and stronger. Your brain resists because it loves safety, while your spirit asks for growth. And between the two, a dialogue is waiting to be restored. When you honor that dialogue, when you treat yourself not as a problem to fix, but as a person to lead, your mind begins to follow a steadier authority than impulse. Ancient wisdom has language for this steadiness. Solomon spoke of walls and gates, of cities that fall when self-control is thin, and cities that stand when the watch is set. Imagine your attention as a set of gates at dawn. The world is already knocking, and you decide what enters and what waits. This is not about harshness, it is about guardianship. The brain settles when the path is marked, and the boundary is clear. Emotional neuroscience calls it reducing cognitive load and decision fatigue. The sages called it wisdom. Different language, same human nervous system. When the gates are watched, the city rests. When your choices are pre-decided by values, not by moods, the mind discovers a calmer road to travel. There is a reason your day feels scattered when you stumble into it. Architecture comes before energy. If you build a small temple in time, a first best portion that you give to what matters, the rest of the day stops pushing you around. The prefrontal cortex loves predictability because predictability frees it to do higher work. Your soul loves consecration because consecration tells the truth about what you honor. Give your finest hour to your highest work and notice what changes in your breath, in your shoulders, in the texture of your thoughts. Discipline, at its healthiest, is not a clenched jaw. It is a designed environment that makes the right thing easier than the wrong thing, the important thing nearer than the loud thing, the chosen thing more attractive than the default. Voices also shape the chemistry of your attention. What you consume writes tomorrow's focus. The brain is social even when you are alone, and your inner weather shifts with the counsel you allow near your gates. When your feeds drip novelty into your reward circuits, intention is declared but not delivered because 1,000 tiny hooks are pulling at your time. Choose a small circle of wise inputs and let the noise move past your walls, and you will feel something almost sacred: silence returning, clarity returning, the slow strength of being taught by fewer, truer sources. Environment beats intention. The counsel you keep becomes the current that carries your work forward. There is, too, a kinder way to harness appetite. Your biology learns through consequence and reward, and there is nothing childish about that design. When a visible scoreboard makes progress concrete, when a modest pleasure waits on the far side of completed deep work, when a promise to a real person sets a boundary around procrastination, your brain stops negotiating and starts moving. The limbic system does not hate effort, it hates ambiguity. Close the loop with immediate feedback, and you will feel momentum gather. The pleasant weight of earned dopamine, the warmth that lands in the body when you keep your word. Appetite can be a saboteur when left untended. It can also be a foreman that urges you on. Still, most of what blocks you is small and faithful in its mischief. A dozen open tabs that split your intention into threads, a perfectionism that wears virtue's mask while it delays your life, a late-night routine that steals from the morning you promised to protect. These are the little foxes in the vineyard, almost harmless in isolation, quietly devastating in a pack. You do not need to wrestle them, you need to notice them, name them, and remove their hiding places. It is astonishing how much work returns when you remove one thorn from the field, how much ease returns when the desk is cleared and tomorrow's first step is prepared tonight. Let this be the turn in your story, not because the feeling has arrived, but because the choice has. Feel the chair meet your spine and the ground meet your feet. Soften the jaw and lengthen the breath. You are not waiting for permission, you are granting it. You are not auditioning for your own life, you are inhabiting it. Today, structure speaks louder than mood. Today, wisdom speaks clearer than impulse. Today, the smallest faithful action is greater than the loudest good intention. If something in you is weary, let it rest in the gentleness of this truth. You are not behind, you are beginning again, which is the only place anyone begins. There are mornings when the air inside the room feels heavy and the mind drifts like mist over water, and in that quiet resistance, a simple task begins to look impossible. The body understands comfort and the brain protects it with 100 soft breaks, each one whispering not yet and maybe later, and let me feel ready first. This is not failure. This is biology doing what biology does. It guards your energy. It shields you from risk. It searches for safety before it releases effort. Yet another part of you keeps calling. It is steadier than mood and older than habit. It is the part that knows your life will not wait for the perfect weather. What we often call motivation is not the spark at the beginning. It is the warmth that arrives once the fire has already caught. Motion generates the feeling we think we need in order to move. The nervous system learns by doing. When a task begins, even in the smallest of ways, the body receives a signal of direction. Muscles gather themselves. Breath finds rhythm. The brain shifts from forecasting the cost of action to sensing the progress of action, and chemistry follows. Dopamine, norepinephrine, and the subtler waves of focus begin to rise as evidence accumulates that you are moving. The feeling comes after. It almost always comes after. Solomon spoke of cities and walls, of gates that keep what is precious safe, and streets that lie open when those gates are left unattended. A person without self-control is open in the same way, and storms wander in. This image is not harsh. It is protective. It says that what you value deserves a boundary, and what you guard slowly builds peace inside you. When the day begins with watched gates, the city rests. When your choices are set by values rather than passing weather, your inner world finds a calm that mood alone cannot manufacture. The mind believes the environment. It trusts structure. It relaxes when it feels the ground of a clear beginning. Some people discover that a brief opening ritual soothes the system like warm hands around a cup. The action is small and concrete. It might be a single line on a page, a quiet reading of a purpose that matters, a few mindful breaths with the spine lifted and the feet anchored to the floor. What matters is not the theatrics but the clarity. The brain recognizes the ritual as a doorway. Cross the doorway and you are inside the task. Delay the doorway and you hover on the threshold where fear loves to talk. A consistent beginning lowers the strain of deciding because the beginning is already decided. Others find relief in pre-decided cues. When this happens, then that begins. When the room turns quiet, then the project opens. When the coffee is finished, then the first sentence is written. The cue is ordinary. The power is extraordinary. Decision fatigue drains attention because every new choice requires energy. And the modern day multiplies choices until the mind is thin. A simple when-then pattern removes bargaining and gives your attention a handrail. You are not ordering yourself around. You are giving your brain a kind promise that removes friction from starting. There is also mercy in using small deadlines that create honest pressure without cruelty. The brain wakes when time is not endless. A short and clearly bounded window softens perfectionism by making it unnecessary. Now there is only the next step and the next breath and the next honest attempt. The amygdala calms when the task is bite-sized because the risk feels survivable. The prefrontal cortex engages because the path is visible. Progress becomes measurable, and what is measurable becomes meaningful, not a marathon. A simple stretch of road you can see from where you are. The old habit of waiting for a better feeling can look like kindness, yet it often becomes a disguised delay. Feelings are precious, and they tell the truth about pain and stress, but they are not reliable clocks. They do not keep time for the work that builds a future. Begin gently, and you will notice the body changing its mind about effort. Shoulders loosen, breath steadies, the jaw releases. A sense of agency returns, not through force, but through momentum. You begin to trust that mood will catch up if you invite it with action. On days when it does not, there is no shame in beginning again. Shame thickens the air and slows the hands. It tells a false story about identity and worth. The wiser story is simpler. You are a person learning how to lead a very old brain with very modern demands. You are a person building walls that protect, not walls that imprison. You are a person setting a gate at dawn and welcoming in what nourishes your life. This is not a battle against yourself. It is a cooperation between your design and your desire. Notice what happens when you reduce the distance between idea and touch, between intention and the smallest contact with the work. The mind stops forecasting disaster when it is busy doing one clear thing. The body stops bracing for impact when it senses rhythm. Momentum is an ally. It is quiet and trustworthy. It does not arrive in a parade. It arrives in the next reachable move that tells your whole system we are safe enough to continue. Every person you admire has learned to stand before the moment of beginning and lean toward it, even when the weather inside feels unsettled. This is not bravado. It is respect for a law woven into our nervous system and echoed in ancient wisdom. The first movement matters. Permission does not come from mood. Permission comes from meaning, and meaning is ready sooner than motivation. Where are you waiting on a feeling that only shows up after you start? There is a different kind of strength that does not begin with strain. It begins with design. Many people wake into a day already full of static and discover that their best attention is spent before they even touch what matters. The mind is a river, and the river takes the shape of its banks. When the banks are vague, the current spills into any open field. When the banks are clear, the current deepens and runs true. The difference is not willpower against chaos. The difference is architecture that welcomes calm. There is an old wisdom about first fruits that still breathes in modern rooms. Give the finest portion to what is highest, and the rest of the day is blessed by that choice. The prefrontal regions that steer planning and meaning love certainty at the opening of the day, because certainty frees them to think. The soul also relaxes in a sense of consecration, because consecration is a way of telling the truth about value. When the first quiet hour belongs to focus, the later noise loses some of its power. The world still asks for you, yet it finds you seated at an inner court that is already spoken for. Many notice that attention grows stronger when entrances are guarded. Messages and alerts promise urgency, yet fail to deliver peace. When they are allowed to rush the gates, the mind spends its morning on reaction and spends the afternoon trying to recover. When they are gathered into gentle windows, the nervous system stops bracing against sudden pulls. The amygdala rests, the chest loosens, the work deepens. The mind trusts a day that moves with rhythm rather than a day that jerks the wheel. A day with rhythm is not rigid. It is kind. It has a quiet beginning that repeats. It has places for communication that arrive like trains on time. It has a closing ritual that marks the end so recovery can begin. These small guardrails reduce the invisible labor of constant choosing. Decision fatigue is hungry. It eats focus. Every removed decision returns a little strength to your hands. You feel it when you sit down and there is nothing to argue about. The path is already set. The body enters, and the mind follows. Some people fear that protecting an inner court will make them cold or unavailable. The opposite is usually true. When the most important work receives a clear home in time, the heart becomes more generous in the remaining hours because resentment fades. You are no longer carrying the weight of abandoned intentions. You are no longer pretending to listen while your thoughts run after what was neglected. Integrity grows, and with it, a softer patience for the needs of others. There is also a neuroscience to the sacred stop. Brains consolidate memory and insight during recovery. Creativity is not only a product of intense focus, it is also a product of release. When a day has an honest ending, the deeper networks have room to integrate what you learned. Sleep arranges the puzzle while you are not watching. The next day arrives with a surprising ease because the pieces have quietly moved closer to their places. Space must be curated not only in time, but in sound and sight. Visual clutter multiplies mental load. Audio clutter keeps the threat system slightly lit. A cleared surface is not a decoration. It is a signal to the brain that nothing else needs to be processed right now. A softened environment is not a luxury. It is a kindness that lets the body settle enough for sustained thought. The mind is not a machine separated from its surroundings. It is a living thing in constant conversation with the room. There is a phrase that helps: honor the first and best. It applies to minutes and to attention and to heart. Honor the first by beginning with one meaningful act that declares your intention without fanfare. Honor the best by offering the clearest part of your awareness to the work that actually builds the future you desire. Over time, this rhythm becomes a kind of trust. Your mind stops waiting for proof that you will show up. It knows you will. It meets you at the inner court, and the two of you begin. Solomon spoke in images of gates and courts and treasures guarded with care. Translate those images into your life, and they look like mornings that belong to focus, and afternoons that hold conversation, and evenings that are allowed to close. They look like a phone that rests while you do not. They look like a calendar that is not a prison but a garden with tended paths. Most of all, they look like a person who is no longer scattered, because what matters most is no longer competing with everything else. When your day becomes a temple, the hours do not become narrow, they become spacious. You notice the sound of your own breath. You notice your shoulders dropping as the page fills. You notice a warmth in the chest that arrives when your actions agree with your values. This harmony does not shout. It hums. It carries you from one meaningful step to the next without the old panic that you are falling behind 1,000 demands. You are not behind. You are within a design that can hold you. If my calendar were a temple, what is the inner court, and have I guarded its hours? The mind is a porous gate, and every voice that knocks leaves a trace, a tone, a tiny chemical echo that tilts your day. Streams of novelty keep tapping the reward circuits like rain on glass, and what seems harmless and light begins to rewire expectation, training attention to seek the next flicker rather than the next depth. The body feels it as restlessness in the chest and a scattered hum under the skin, a hunger that is never quite fed. It is not weakness, it is learning. The brain learns whatever it repeats, and if it repeats noise, it will begin to crave noise. There is an older way. Wisdom speaks of counsel in times of war and of victory that comes from voices that have earned their place. The image is tender and strong at once. A table where only a few sit, each one chosen for clarity and steadiness, each one aligned with the life you say you want. Modern language calls it environment shaping and cue control, and the science is simple. Attention follows inputs. Hormones and neurotransmitters follow attention. Decisions follow the states that chemistry supports. Call it spiritual, call it neural, the pattern is the same. The counsel you keep becomes the weather inside your head. You can feel the difference on mornings when the first touch is a feed that drips novelty, because the appetite wakes for sugar and the rest of the day tastes bland. Ideas skim instead of sink, memory fragments instead of binds. The brain begins to expect fast lights and quick relief, and anything slower looks like boredom. Yet boredom is often the doorway to insight. On other mornings, the first touch is a page or a voice that carries weight, and the system slows in a good way. Breathing deepens, thought gathers. The sense of self feels less pulled and more anchored. Some people create a small circle of trusted sources and let the rest flow past like water that does not need to be caught. Imagine a quiet library with 5 shelves, and each shelf holds one companion for this season. One teacher of craft, one voice of character, one model of discipline, one scholar of your field, one elder of the soul. The image is symbolic, and it is also practical in the way it calms the nervous system. Scarcity of input breeds value. Value breeds attention. Attention breeds depth. The body recognizes the order and relaxes into it. It also helps when one person knows what you are building and sees your process rather than only your outcomes. Human brains regulate in relationship, and being gently observed changes the way effort feels. It is not the pressure of performance, it is the warmth of being witnessed. The mirror systems that tune to other minds begin to steady your own signals, and the expectation effect lends you a quiet courage. You work not to impress, but to be honest in the presence of someone who understands the weight and worth of your intention. There is a mercy in fasting from inputs that do not nourish. A day with no algorithmic tug returns the baseline that constant novelty has lifted. After the first restless hours, a kind of stillness arrives, and in that stillness, ideas that had been drowned by noise begin to surface on their own. The creative networks love this space. The spiritual heart loves it too. What looked like emptiness becomes fertile ground, and what sounded like silence begins to ring with threads of connection you had been too crowded to hear. Even the room can become a counselor, a device that rests face down, a desk that holds only what supports the task, a door that signals quiet. These are not rules spoken with a hard voice. They are conditions that speak to the animal of the body in a language it understands. When the bell does not ring, the startled response stops bracing. When the eyes do not scan clutter, the prefrontal hills do not tire so quickly. The interior feels more like a chapel than a market, and work that asks for devotion finally has a place to sit. There may be moments when the absence of noise feels like a kind of loneliness. Withdrawal can mimic emptiness because the brain misses the tiny fireworks it learned to expect. Let it be awkward for a while. Taste will change with exposure. Sweetness fades to its true size and subtler flavors return. You notice tone in a mentor's sentence that you missed before. You notice the grain of your own voice becoming steadier. You notice the way a page invites you to stay a little longer than you used to. What you gaze upon, you begin to resemble. This is not poetry alone. It is plasticity. Circuits wire toward what is rehearsed, and identity follows the path of least resistance. If the rehearsal is scattered, the self feels scattered. If the rehearsal is wise, the self begins to take on a wise shape. Over time, the small circle becomes a quiet force that shifts your center of gravity. Decisions at the edge of fatigue lean toward what those voices would bless. Courage in the middle of doubt borrows their strength. Which voices have keys to your attention gates, and do they deserve them? There are seasons when the days stretch like soft wool and everything important slides to the edges, and in that slow drift, a strange heaviness gathers. It does not feel like rebellion. It feels like fog. Projects stall, not because they are impossible, but because the path toward them is unlit. The body keeps choosing the easier warmth of now, and the mind keeps promising a later that never quite arrives. This is not proof of a broken will. It is the limbic system doing what it knows best, saving energy by chasing small rewards that are close at hand. The ache you feel is not only moral, it is chemical. It is the distance between the life you imagine and the feedback your brain keeps receiving. There is an older line of wisdom that meets this place with kindness and clarity. Appetite can work for you, not as a tyrant that drags you by the collar, but as a steady foreman that nudges the day along. The image is simple and earthy. A worker moves because a felt hunger pushes from within and a promised meal pulls from ahead. In spiritual language, it sounds like desire rightly ordered. In the language of emotional neuroscience, it sounds like the reward system being trained by honest cues. Different tongues. The same human heart learning to move. When progress is invisible, the brain files effort under uncertain gain and delays the start. When progress is visible, the same brain begins to believe that energy spent will return to you with interest. People who recover their momentum often surround themselves with gentle proof that their work is becoming real. A page where marks gather. A wall where small wins live where eyes can see them. A ledger of hours that shows up like footprints in fresh snow. These are not trophies, they are signals. They tell the nervous system that the path exists and is worth the steps it costs. There is a quiet strength in naming a time by which a piece will be shared with a real human face, not a threat. A bond. The social brain, tuned to belonging since the beginning, awakens a deeper sense of responsibility when a promise lives between souls. The pressure is not cruel when the promise is humane. It sharpens attention just enough to lift you over the low fence of avoidance. Ambiguity fades because the horizon is closer. The mind quits measuring the mountain and starts measuring the next slope. Pleasure can be a teacher rather than a trap when it arrives as a seal placed after meaningful effort. The body remembers patterns with pleasure at the center. If the small delight waits on the far side of a finished focus block, the circuitry learns a clean association that honors both work and rest. The sensation is unmistakable. A steadier warmth replaces the jittery buzz of distraction. The chest feels roomier. The face softens. What once felt like punishment begins to feel like nourishment because your actions and your rewards are no longer at war. None of this requires harshness. Gentleness often trains the animal part of us better than contempt ever could. The brain trusts what is consistent more than what is loud. It relaxes when boundaries are clear and humane. A short window of concentrated effort becomes a container that calms the amygdala, because the risk is limited and the end is in sight. The prefrontal regions step forward when the task is bite-sized and the feedback loop is immediate. You can feel the shift in your breathing as the mind enters a groove that is neither frantic nor numb, a groove where attention hums like a well-kept tool. Drift has companions. Perfectionism that inflates the cost of beginning. Multitasking that splits effort into threads too thin to hold. Hidden fear of judgment that dresses up as endless preparation. Appetite learns from these companions and becomes skittish, craving the relief of tiny novelties that keep you safe from the risk of being seen. Wisdom answers without accusation. It trims the thorns that snag your momentum. It replaces vague intention with a horizon you can name. It turns the noisy room into a workshop where the next honest pass is always enough for now. Some days will still sag. This is not failure, it is weather. The kind response on such days is to make the rails closer and the steps smaller, not to abandon the path or call yourself names. Brains do not bloom under shame, they freeze. They bloom under steady sunlight and light rain. They bloom when the goal is not a flawless performance, but a true showing up that leaves a trace. Over time, the traces draw a line, and the line becomes a road, and the road begins to carry you even when energy is thin. Spiritual people have said for ages that desire can be purified, that hunger can be turned toward what sustains life rather than what only numbs it. Neuroscience adds that habits are desires with a schedule. When the schedule fits your shape and honors your limits, desire flows along it like water finding its riverbed. The hunger that once pulled you off course becomes the very energy that returns you to your craft. Appetite, guided and blessed, urges you on. What immediate and meaningful consequence will make inaction more uncomfortable than action? Some days unravel not with a crash, but with a soft tearing at the edges, a dozen tiny snags that you almost do not notice until the light has changed and your best attention has wandered off. It looks harmless in the moment, a quick peek at a new window, a tidy edit that no one asked for, a late night that steals from the morning you promised to honor. The cost does not announce itself with sirens. It arrives as a slow leak. The mind tries to hold a shape while the small pressures keep pulling, and by afternoon you feel scattered and strangely tired, as if you've been working hard at avoiding the work. Ancient wisdom names these small saboteurs with a tender clarity: little foxes in the vineyard, thorns in a field that was once straight and clean. The image is gentle because it understands how human it is to be worn down by small things, and it is firm because it knows the harvest suffers when they are not removed. The vineyard still exists, the field is still yours, but loss accumulates in quiet ways. In the language of the brain, this is cognitive load rising past the point of grace. Every stray tab is a thread the working memory tries to hold. Every switch between tasks forces the prefrontal regions to lift and set down mental tools. And each lift carries a cost you feel as friction and fatigue. Perfectionism often masquerades as care while it keeps you from moving. It promises excellence and delivers delay. Underneath it, the threat system is whispering about judgment and exposure, so the safest path seems to be endless revision before the world can see what you made. The body tells on this pattern. Shoulders climb. Breath gets shallow. Time feels tight even when the clock says there is plenty. In this state, the brain hunts for relief and finds it in small distractions that pretend to soothe while they fray your edge. What looks like discipline is often fear in a polished mask, and fear grows well in cluttered ground. Clutter is not only physical, it is mental and digital and relational. A crowded desk makes the eyes scan for what needs sorting, and the mind wastes precious energy on deciding again. A crowded screen invites a form of attention that never lands, a grazing that keeps the reward system humming while starving the deeper parts that need stillness to synthesize and create. Even a crowded promise book, full of yes when your energy asked for fewer commitments, can turn a day into a maze. The heart begins to feel unfaithful to itself, and the guilt of that feeling becomes another fox tearing at the vines. There is a kindness in narrowing the field after you notice how wide it has grown. One window for the work in front of you, so your mind can settle into one landscape without the constant tug of other places. One definition of good enough that honors honest craft without demanding a shine that belongs to a later season. One small closing ritual at day's end that returns the room to order and sets out the first tool for the next morning. These choices are not punishments. They are mercies that return dignity to effort. The nervous system hears them as safety and responds with steadier focus and a calmer chest. The fatigue that follows constant switching has a particular taste. It feels like a mind that cannot grip, like hands that tighten on the steering wheel for no clear reason, like a fog behind the eyes that does not lift with more caffeine. When you protect a stretch of single tasking, you can feel the opposite state rise. Muscles loosen. Time slows in a good way. Insight approaches, not as a shout, but as a friend who sits down beside you. The creative networks love this unbroken attention and reward it with connections that only appear when the surface of thought is quiet enough to reflect. Evenings hold a quiet power in this healing. What happens in the last light often writes the script for the first light. A room returned to order speaks to the morning with a soft authority. A single note that names the next starting place greets you like a hand held out at the door. Devices allowed to sleep while you do teach the body to descend into deeper rest. And deep rest returns the patience and clarity that your work asks of you. This is not a moral performance. It is an ecology. Each part nourishes the next until the whole system begins to feel humane again. Spiritual language calls this tending the garden. Protective language calls it restoring the walls. Neuroscience calls it reducing hidden drains and training the brain to trust a simpler loop. They are three names for the same art. You are making a place where your best self can breathe. You are pulling thorns, not because you hate the field, but because you love the harvest. You are learning that the smallest faithful act can change the climate of a day more than any dramatic sprint performed in exhaustion. It is tempting to wait for a surge of strength to make all of this effortless. Strength grows more often from small agreements kept than from rare flashes of power. Each time you choose one clear window instead of a dozen, each time you ship a sincere 70% rather than chase a perfect that never arrives, each time you set the table for tomorrow and let the night close, the brain records a new pattern. Over time, the pattern becomes a path, and the path becomes who you are in motion. Which tiny fox, perfectionism, clutter, or switching ruins my harvest most? Morning arrives like a soft threshold, and the room remembers you. You sit inside a quiet that is not empty, it is a shelter. The gates of attention feel watched. You sense the old reflex to scan for noise. Then a steadier rhythm answers, and the first touch of work becomes a blessing rather than a burden. This is the hour of walls and foundations, the hour when the soul and the prefrontal mind agree to begin without asking permission from mood. Breath settles, shoulders loosen, and the page receives your presence the way earth receives rain. The finest portion goes first. Ancient language calls it honoring the first and best, and the body knows the wisdom of that order. When the opening stretch belongs to what is highest, clarity gathers like light moving across stone. Distractions knock and pass by. Messages wait at the gate. The brain trusts what repeats, and you have taught it that this early ground is sacred. You move in a single direction long enough for depth to appear, and depth brings a calm that cannot be borrowed from noise. Voices enter only after the inner court has been tended. You keep the circle small and the counsel wise. There is a teacher of craft in your ear, a keeper of character at your shoulder, a steady elder who reminds you what your life is for. Novelty still exists at the edges, yet it no longer sets the pace. The chemistry of attention shifts accordingly. Restlessness fades, focus thickens. The day begins to sound like a room with a few clear instruments, rather than a market where everything shouts. Progress becomes visible in gentle ways, a line added to a log, a quiet mark on a wall, a trace that says the work is not a rumor. It is here. The nervous system relaxes into effort when effort leaves evidence. You feel it as warmth in the chest, a patient energy that nudges you forward. When a promise lives between you and a trusted face, attention sharpens without cruelty. The horizon stands closer, and the mind stops arguing with the start. Pleasure arrives as a seal placed after honest labor. You finish a deep stretch and allow a small delight that confirms the worth of the path. The body understands this pairing. The old circuitry that chased shallow spikes learns to wait for a richer glow, and in that waiting, your hunger is re-educated. The day acquires a cadence that feels human. Work and rest stop fighting and begin to bless each other. The little foxes still test the fence. A second window beckons. A polish that adds little whispers for more time. A late glow on a screen tries to borrow from tomorrow. You notice the pull and answer with kindness rather than contempt. The desk returns to a simple surface. The work lives in a single landscape where your eyes can rest. Good enough becomes an act of integrity rather than a reluctant compromise. The harvest matters more than the shine, and the harvest grows best in tended ground. Midday brings its familiar dip. Instead of naming it failure, you greet it like weather. Steps narrow, expectations soften. You continue in shorter arcs that still leave prints. The system trusts the path because the path keeps appearing. The old habit of reaching for quick relief quiets as your appetite learns the sweetness of completion. Momentum becomes a low, steady hum that carries you through the softer light. Evening is a gate as real as morning. The room returns to order with a gentle hand. The next starting point is placed where you will find it when the sun is new. Devices sleep while you do, and the deeper networks of the brain weave the day's learning without interruption. The spirit rests in the safety of endings that are honored. Tomorrow begins to form even as you release today, the way a field gathers strength during the dark. This is not a rigid program. It is a living rhythm shaped by mercy and truth. Walls that protect rather than imprison. A temple of time where the first and best are kept. Counsel that steadies rather than scatters. Appetite trained to pull in the right direction. Foxes noticed and gently removed. Neuroscience would name the same pattern with its own terms. And wisdom would smile, because both languages are speaking of a life arranged to welcome focus and peace. You do not force yourself through this day, you are accompanied through it. The design carries you when feeling wavers. The quiet decisions you made upstream spare you from 1,000 noisy choices downstream. By night, you sense a different kind of tired, the good kind that follows meaning. And under that softness, you also sense a growing strength, like a city whose walls have been repaired at dawn, and whose gates now open and close with care. What would shift if your hours were shaped this way, and your life answered in kind? Some days begin with harmony, and then, without warning, the music falters. A child wakes early. A message tugs at the sleeve of your attention. A wave of tiredness rises from nowhere, and every promise you made to yourself feels fragile. The body tightens and the brain starts to bargain, and the old pattern whispers that today is already lost. Nothing is broken in you when this happens. This is weather. This is life speaking in its many voices. The work is still there, and the path toward it can still be kind. There are moments when you miss a day, and shame arrives with heavy boots, claiming that the small ruin is proof of a larger failure. Shame is loud and rarely accurate. The nervous system contracts under it, and creativity hides. What often restores the path is a gentler rhythm that invites one clear movement and then another, not as a command, but as a welcome. The mind loosens when the next step is simple enough to see and humane enough to meet you where you are. In that soft opening, momentum begins to live again. Some lives cannot protect an early hour, and the world demands presence long before the sun has found its place. Wisdom does not argue with reality. It finds the quiet that exists inside your actual day, the pocket of time that can hold your best attention even if it arrives later than you hoped. The brain does not worship the clock. It trusts consistency and meaning. When your inner court appears at a different hour, the spirit can still recognize it and enter with the same depth. There is also the ache of feeling always reachable, the sense that the gate can never fully close. The social brain learned long ago that belonging is safety, and so the alert remains half-lit, even in calm rooms. What steadies this state is not a hard wall, but a rhythm that teaches your system when to open and when to rest. Bodies relax when they feel the pattern, and minds think more clearly when the startle is quiet. Over time, the people around you begin to sense the same rhythm, and life grows more spacious without anyone being shut out. On some afternoons, the river of attention thins, and nothing seems to carry weight. Fatigue lifts its hand and asks for a kinder pace. In these hours, it helps to allow work to arrive in shorter arcs that still leave a trace, as if you were laying stones across a shallow stream rather than leaping it in one brave bound. The science of learning smiles on this patience, and the soul does too, because it feels respected rather than driven. There will be days when your best plans meet grief or illness or sudden change, and the harvest must wait. Wisdom has never been cruel to the hurting. Ancient voices spoke of seasons and fields lying fallow so that strength could return. The brain heals in cycles and the heart recovers in waves, and neither responds to harshness. When you meet yourself with tenderness in these valleys, the valley becomes a place of quiet rebuilding, and you discover that integrity can be kept even when output pauses. Perfectionism raises its polished mask again and again, promising safety through flawlessness and leaving you stranded at the edge of beginning. The mind believes it is protecting you from judgment when it is only protecting you from movement. Many find relief when good enough is defined with care and dignity, not as an excuse to lower worth, but as a wise boundary that honors progress. Once the work is allowed to breathe, life returns to it, and the next pass becomes possible. Sometimes the silence you crafted feels like loneliness, and the absence of noise reveals an emptiness you did not expect. This is not a sign to abandon the quiet. It is a sign that your senses are recalibrating. The brain that once chased sparks is learning to see by softer light. Give it time, and you will notice subtler textures in thought and a warmer gravity in your own voice. The work you were meant to do prefers that light. Responsibility to others can seem to compete with responsibility to your craft, and the conflict can feel like a tearing inside the chest. Integration grows when intention is made visible in small ways. A calendar that reflects your values, a closing ritual that protects the people you love from the leftover stress of unfinished tasks. A presence that is real because the core work has a home. When the inner court is honored, generosity becomes lighter and more sincere. What if the day speaks in contradictions? What if interruptions keep arriving? What if you falter again? Then you begin again, not as punishment, but as a return to friendship with your own design. The gates are watched with mercy. The temple receives your first and finest possible focus. The circle of voices stays wise and small. Appetite learns to pull in the right direction. The little foxes lose their hiding places. It is not a dramatic victory. It is a steady one. It feels like peace that holds under pressure. What would change if resistance were not an enemy to crush, but a messenger to greet and guide toward a quieter strength? Before the world grows loud, there is a hush over the streets, and the first light touches the stone. And in that light, you can see the outlines of a city that remembers its strength. The walls stand where they once crumbled. The gates open and close with care. Watchmen trade the last soft words of night as the day takes its breath. This is an image of a mind returned to itself, boundaries kept, entrances tended. Not a fortress against life, but a living place where what is precious can flourish without fear. Far within those walls, an inner court receives the sun. The floor is clean, the air still enough to hear small sounds, and a sense of reverence gathers without anyone forcing it to appear. This is what the first and best hour feels like when it is honored. The prefrontal mind wakes without hurry. The heart remembers why it wanted to begin. Chemistry follows meaning, and not the other way around. The slower networks hum, binding memories and insights, stitching intention to action with threads too fine to see and too strong to break. Out beyond the vineyards, small shapes move along the edges and then disappear. The little foxes have lost their hiding places. Vines that once suffered in silence lift toward the light, and the fruit grows unbruised by 1,000 tiny teeth. This is what happens when clutter is cleared and switches are fewer, and perfectionism loosens its hold. The harvest does not shout, it accumulates. Day by day, the field looks less like a map of delays and more like a record of care. Somewhere in a workshop, a craftsman wakes the tools. There is a hunger in the body that does not harass or humiliate. It is a clean appetite that urges the hands toward the task, a pull from within matched by a promise from ahead. The brain that once scattered after easy sparks now waits for the richer glow that follows honest effort. The reward system, so often blamed, becomes an ally. It marks the path. It sweetens completion. It teaches the nervous system to love what truly sustains. All of this is spiritual, and all of this is human. It is the breath settling as you cross the threshold into work. It is the jaw softening when the next step is small enough to see. It is the watch set at the gates so that urgent noise does not rule the morning. It is the inner court lit, the circle of voices small and wise, the appetite yoked to meaning, the foxes gently removed. Ancient wisdom and emotional neuroscience meet like old friends here. One speaks of cities and walls and vineyards and craftsmen. The other speaks of networks and hormones and loops of feedback. They are naming the same mercy that descends when life is arranged with care. You may hear an older story trying to rise, the one that tells you this is too simple for a complicated life. Yet simplicity is not a downgrade. It is an alignment. It returns weight to what matters and lightness to what does not. It frees the mind from the exhausting posture of constantly bracing. It frees the heart from the shame that grows in the gap between intention and action. In this alignment, the day feels more like a river with honest banks and less like a floodplain after a storm. Strength in this way does not swagger. It steadies. It is the peace of a gate that knows its purpose, the quiet joy of an altar tended, the patient rhythm of hands that keep their own promises, the relief of a field no longer caught by thorns. You sense it in your body as warmth along the sternum and length in the spine. You hear it in your thoughts as a tone that is less frantic and more whole. You notice it in your relationships as a deeper presence, because you are no longer haunted by the work you keep abandoning. The city at dawn is not far away. It is as near as the next gentle agreement with yourself. It is as near as the choice to honor what you value with time and attention and mercy. It is as near as the light that is already touching your day, asking only to be noticed. When you answer that light, the gates hear you, the courts hear you, the vines hear you, the tools in your hands hear you, and the mind begins to sound like a home again. What would change this week if your walls were tended, your inner court lit, your foxes chased from the vines, and your honest appetite allowed to guide your hands? There is a moment after the last word when the room holds a softer silence, and in that silence, something in you is still listening, not for a command or a demand, but for a truer rhythm that you have begun to recognize. It sounds like watched gates and tended courts. It sounds like counsel that is small and wise. It sounds like appetite that urges with kindness. It sounds like a field free of thorns. This sound belongs to you. It is not foreign. It is the tone of a life that fits your soul and respects your nervous system, a life that welcomes depth without crushing you under the weight of performance. Across the days ahead, there will be shifts so small they almost escape notice. The hand will reach less often for the glittering distraction that used to promise relief. The eyes will rest more easily on one open window. The breath will find its pace more quickly at the threshold of the work. The pulse of the city inside you will feel less like sirens and more like morning. None of this arrives in a single sweep. It arrives as returning to the first and best, returning to the circle of voices that strengthen you, returning to the gentle consequence that keeps the path clear, returning to the removal of what only tangles. You may catch yourself waiting for a surge of will and find instead a steadier current. That current is architecture doing quiet work on your behalf. It is the way a room that is ready invites presence. It is the way a pre-decided rhythm reduces the friction that once made you doubt your strength. It is the way small evidence adds weight to belief until belief becomes character. The body reads these signs and relaxes into them. Shoulders lower, face softens, focus thickens without the old fight. There will still be weather. There will still be afternoons that ask for mercy and evenings that ask for rest. Wisdom does not call this failure. Wisdom calls this life. The pattern holds even when a day bends under its own weight, because the pattern was never punishment. It was a shelter. When you return, the shelter opens. When you pause, the shelter waits. When you heal, the shelter holds. In this way, perseverance stops sounding like gritted teeth and starts sounding like faithfulness to a design that blesses you. Ancient images continue to offer a language when words feel thin. City and wall, gate and watch, vineyard and fox, temple and inner court, craftsman and appetite. They are not relics from a world that no longer exists. They are mirrors for the world you carry inside your chest. Emotional neuroscience nods in agreement and brings its own terms, yet both point toward the same living truth. When order is kind, the mind works. When meaning is honored, the heart rests. When effort leaves evidence, the spirit finds courage to continue. You have seen glimpses of this already, not as spectacle, but as a quiet brightness at the edges of your day. A passage that flowed because the beginning was simple and near. A conversation that felt clear because your inner court had been tended. A night that restored you because the room was returned to peace. These moments are not accidents. They are signs that your life responds to gentleness and structure more than it ever responded to scolding and strain. If the voice of doubt returns, let it be met by memory. Remember the feeling of momentum gathering when the start was small. Remember the steadiness that came when counsel was curated. Remember the relief of seeing progress in plain sight. Remember the difference in your chest when the foxes had fewer places to hide. Memory can be a kind teacher when it points you back to what already worked, not with accusation, but with a patient hand on your shoulder. This path is not about deserving, it is about about alignment. It trusts that your worth is not on trial and that your brain is not an enemy to conquer. It trusts that meaning and attention can become companions. It trusts that structure can be a form of love. It trusts that small faithfulness accumulates into a life you recognize as your own. In this trust, the work that once felt heavy begins to feel like participation in something larger than your mood, larger than your fear, larger than any single day. So the invitation is quiet and clear. Let the next hour resemble the truest part of you. Let the first and best receive their light. Let wise voices stay near. Let appetite be trained by honest effort. Let the foxes lose their ground. Do this not as a command laid upon you, but as a blessing spoken over you. The blessing sounds like this: may your gates be watched with mercy. May your inner court be kept with peace. May your work leave a trace that strengthens your hands. May your rest return you to yourself. What begins to change when you live as if the city within you is already worthy of careful walls, already deserving of tended courts, already ready for the morning that is now.